Okay, well, we will go ahead and get started. Thank you again for giving us time to be here and also for filling out the questionnaire for us. We do these activities to get to know the candidates and legislators if they're incumbents. Gives us an opportunity to understand what the platform is and the work that they want to see done out in Bismarck. So we appreciate your time. We appreciate the fact that you're running. That's awesome. But it also gives you an opportunity to get to know who we are and what we do, what the HBA is. So we, before I get started, just quickly, I'm going to have our members introduce themselves. So we have a few of our leadership here today. And so company name, your business name, and how you're involved in the HBA. You just.
Sure. I'm Nancy Kelly with Labor Masters, and I'm the current vice president of the Home Builders Foundation.
And I'm also with Labor Masters, and I'm the current vice president, associate vice president.
I'm Sam McDonald with Cascade Community Land Trust and on the Public Policy Committee for HBA.
And I'm Elizabeth Kozel with HBA, and I'm the Public Affairs and Education Coordinator here.
Awesome. So, and you've been working with Elizabeth, of course. What we're gonna do is just have each of you introduce yourselves, take 2 minutes to talk about what you want to do, what you want to see done in the legislature and how you can represent us. And Elizabeth will hold up a card at the 30-second mark to help you kind of wrap up, and then a hard stop on the red card. Just finish your sentence at least, so we can keep moving on with questions. And we actually have another session, I think, scheduled for 10:20. So we're a tiny bit behind here. And then we'll do some question and answers. We'll use 1 minute for those. Yellow card at the 30-second mark, red for the stop. And then we'll have you do a wrap up, which will be a 1 minute as well. So so why don't we go ahead and get started? And before does anybody have any questions that they want to start out with? And okay, otherwise you can interject. It's a nice intimate group today. If you would, so start out with your introductions. Sorry, Scott, we'll go with you.
Sure.
Take turns.
Yep. Well, thank you for inviting us. I've had a lot of work in the past life as a county commissioner. I've been off the Cass County Commission for 10 years. I did 3 terms as a Cass County Commissioner. I was on the original diversion authority board. Actually, the precursor to that was the Metro Flexible Work Group. So I was heavily involved with that. And then represented the county, not only when we went to Bismarck, but Washington, DC, as part of that team. I'm a small business owner, 33 years. I have a commercial and residential window cleaning company. I started after high school, I put myself through college. And so, this past August, I've been it was temporarily gonna get me through college. Now I'm in my temporary job for 33 years this past August. Reasons I'm running, I believe I spent 12 years on the Greater Fargo-Moorhead Economic Development Corporation Board. Our economy is critically important to me. Obviously tax policy too. I understand property taxes. And I think it would be refreshing to have people in Bismarck that have served in local government, understand issues at the local level and tax policy, economy. And I really want to have a conversation about that. I think oil is great, but I'm looking at regional economies and how we value them in our state, especially as that relates to, what we get in return back in investments across our state. So with that, I guess I can talk for hours.
Thank you.
I won't do that to you.
Carrie?
Well, thank you too for inviting me. I think this is so important, as a freshman legislator, there's so much I don't know. In fact, I don't know what I don't know at this time. So it's really good to meet with you and to learn from you. And I'm not going to, you had asked us to talk about what our priority issues and goals are. I have a few, but I I'm not gonna go into this work thinking that I know it all. I need to learn from you. So I think that's really so important. I'm hearing from our district members that their biggest concern right now are the property taxes, so we're in agreement on that. I'm hearing that we have members in our district that have been in their homes for a very long time that now feel they probably are not gonna be able to stay in their homes. Property taxes keep going up, and of course, everything else is compounding those concerns for them at this time. So I think that's really important. I've heard from several district members that they like the governor's proposal for the income tax changes, and I've heard from several that do not like them. So, and then I've heard that we just need a mix, with the tax equity so that we bring our sales tax into that as well. So there's a lot of work to do to have these discussions and find out what truly is going to be the best for North Dakota, and I'm going to be learning a lot along the way. And I think as I answer your questions, I mentioned childcare to be another issue that will be addressed during this session. I've met with childcare center owners, and I'm hearing that they feel that it's important to not just streamline licensure, but to make sure the quality is there and to make sure there are mentors and there are people that walk alongside them to be able to help keep these centers going. And then, of course, parents want affordable childcare. So that's a huge issue that we're going to be dealing with. And then I have a personal interest in the energy grid for North Dakota. I'm really hoping to serve on that committee. So, so that's where I am at this point in time.
Thank you. You talked a little bit about some of the areas of service that you've done already. Can you give us an example of what public service achievement that you're most proud of? And start with Carrie first.
When I think of public service, I certainly do not have the experience in that Scott does. I think about serving on the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Commission on Addictions. And we did some really wonderful work, pulling a lot of community leaders and service providers together to talk about what the needs were. And we did go over, we did address some of those needs. So we were able to get some funding for some of the resources that were needed. There's still work to do, but I think that was just an excellent example of public-private work.
All right, thank you. Scott.
I'm gonna name two if I can really quote. One locally was the diversion. I think that was so critical to our area, our economy. I fought 5 floods as a county commissioner, being a initial member of the diversion authority. Prior to that, we actually on the team that picked that project. And as we move forward, that was what I think was a major accomplishment, team effort that we did that I'm proud to be a part to help serve in with that. The other issue, when I was president of North Dakota County Commissioners Association back in 2007, and this has reoccurred over numerous legislative sessions, is where does local control and restricting local control? And in 2007, as president of the County Commissioners Association, we had the North Dakota House passed, first time I think a state to do this, to cap local government. And we fought that back to get 47-0 vote killed that bill. It was attached to the governor's budget and he wanted his budget passed. So it was, the issue there was critical because these hard caps don't work. And there's a debate in this state, and I have been in the legislature for years, about where the best decisions made for local government. And at that time, just real quick, counties statewide were averaging growth, their budgets of 4% a year. The state was growing at 14%. The state wasn't going to cap itself, but they felt that was a good idea to cap local government. I think it's a bad idea. And so there again, someone that served in local government understands that. And that was critical because a few years later, we had our flooding. We would not have had the revenue available. We had 41 counties that were considered disaster areas. And just the point is, it was critically important to stability of local government. And see the red card.
Yeah.
At least I think the League of Women Voters with the
Yeah.
you need
At least it's not a buzzer. Yeah.
The audible throws me off.
What did we use last week?
A bell.
We used a bell. Everybody was like. All right, well, so thank you. Those are great examples. So how about an initiative that you worked on in the past that you didn't succeed? And is it something that you think could be raised in the House with success with your run? So we'll start with Scott this time.
Well, I think when the legislators say we don't control property taxes or have no control over them, there are a lot of administrative things, especially at the county level, that are mandated down to local governments. For instance, the court system, the cost of that was spent actually for a decade to get court funding. Half of that West Addition, I chaired the building committee that built the West Addition courthouse, was $15 million at the time. Half of it is filled with state offices. And $7.5 million put on property taxes. I'd like to see areas where we can responsibly, the state, work with local units of government to continue to work on property taxes outside even just the K-12 education, which has been the primary mechanism of delivering over the last decade.
Okay, thank you. Carrie?
Well, I'm gonna lift up the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Commission again. You know, we did good work, but it ended. And, the need has not quit,
Yeah.
it's escalating again. We were so excited because we were seeing the fentanyl cases dropping and the fentanyl deaths while we were there. But at that time, our Cass County medical director said, we're one weekend away from a bad shipment coming in, so we can't be complacent.
Right.
And now we see those deaths are going up again, and we're seeing, when I talk to people in Cass County that are still working in this area, they're finding high risk and still seeing the numbers go up. So to me, that's an area that, I'm sad that it ended and that we didn't get to do more of that good work. I am encouraged, however, with the studies we're going to hear about from the interim committee on behavioral health. I know there are needs, but I know there will be resources, there will be initiatives to address those. So it's
Okay,
going to be an ongoing work.
thank you. Thinking about the future, what issue is North Dakota going to be dealing with 10 years from now? And how can we prepare for that? And how can even the HBA help you while you're in office? And I think, so Carrie, we start with you this time. This is the hardest when there's only two candidates to keep track back and forth, right? And you're.
Yes,
there,
yeah.
okay.
Wow, I can't even imagine 10 years down. I think we have some big issues to address. The behavioral health is one. We're hearing a lot about the water needs
Yeah,
in our state, and I know there's good work going forward, but that is not going to be a quick fix. As I came back from an energy summit, and I'm hearing that too is going to take time. So, over the next 10 years, those are some of the big things that I think we're going to be working on. And I guess we'll see, what else happens, but
okay,
as far as how you can help us, I need to learn more about that too.
okay, thank you. Scott?
Two things, I think the water supply issue is critical for the for our whole state. But in particular, our area, long-term growth. I think growth is in our state. And the other issue that comes as part of that is the attraction of workforce. And, it's that continual, and I think we've almost completely there in the out-migration of our rural areas to the urban areas, and that's our track. And, we've done a great job too. I mean, we look at the challenges we have, but look at where we've come. We've had 35,000 new people move into Cass County in the last 10 years. And why are they moving here? They're moving here because of opportunity.
Yeah.
So, but that still, there's that challenge long term of continually increasing our workforce in residents to our state, particular our area.
Sure. How about economic incentives? I think this was a question in the one too, but what are your thoughts on the offerings of economic incentives at the state level? Then locals have the option to choose a variation of what they're gonna offer, and can put further parameters in them, but how do you feel about those economic incentives that are out there? Start with Scott.
As you know, my background, I spent 12 years on the EDC board, 7 on the executive. And I would say that our economy and what we were doing here rivaled anywhere in the country with wage growth, population growth, job growth. So I'm a firm believer that there are a number of tools to the greatest extent possible, that should be, the locals should have. Because one need and might not be the same need in Bismarck or Fargo, so we need to have that flexibility at the local level. But I'd also say that we need to be smart. I've never been a believer that it's this all or nothing use.
Yeah.
The Carlson ethanol plant, part of that, that's $100 million project, did a pilot on that. We always have to ask, and I put that in my answers, what's in the best interest of the taxpayer? I think at times, I'm from the school of Brian Walters. He was our economic
Oh, yeah,
development
I remember
director
Brian,
for a
yeah.
number of years, and he's brilliant. He left here, went to Orlando and was vice president of their EDC, and could have been president there, did not want to do that. Came back home and is a successful business owner here. But I do believe that you have to strike a balance on incentives. You can over leverage them, but from a state perspective, I think on locals there again, the same people that elect their state legislators elect their local officials, and they're accountable back to the people in those views. And I think the flexibility needs to be there.
Thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree with Scott on this. I'm pro-growth, I'm pro-business. I think the incentives are very important. I'm hearing from members of my district that, well, maybe these incentives go on a little too long. And so there are nuances that I want to learn more about, but I do think that it's important to do that and support the business growth.
Okay, thank you. And I should mention too, we are a resource, and we have data. It's not subjective or opinions. We have data that shows what happens, whether it's the 2-year property tax exemption for new residential construction. And right now, we know that all the material costs, affordability is a big factor for young families getting out of multi-family units into a new home or getting into an existing home, and then whoever is selling that, getting them into new construction. So we have lots of information, and also building permit studies. We covered 15 jurisdictions, and we do a analysis quarterly, right? I think we publish a quarterly report on that. So if you're in need of anything, let us know for sure. One last question. Is there one thing that you heard during the last session that you took interest in and that you would like to work on it if elected? Carrie, thank you. I do need a cup of coffee.
Yes, I did tune into a lot of the energy and natural resource committee meetings, and it's wonderful that we're able to view that remotely.
Yeah.
So, listening to conversations about the grid and how we need this mix. And so that is something I'm really interested in learning more about, and how we can keep it affordable. We're so fortunate in North Dakota with all the resources we have, but how do we keep our energy affordable for our members of our state, and I'm looking at my district as well. So I do think we need that mix.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
And this is a difficult one. It's an equity issue. It was tough becoming president of the North Dakota County Commissioners Association from Cass years from Imperial Cass. And so you kind of have to work past that to show that you have everybody's interest in mind. So that was a great learning experience for me. Why I mention that is because I think oil is great in our state, but we know that natural resources are volatile in nature in terms of the revenue they produce. We this past year, we generated almost $42 million in sales tax here in Cass County. And so to me, looking across the states, and I was an early strong supporter and testified on behalf of Western counties as we were gearing up with the initial needs of the oil patch. And but as years have gone by, I think because I look at a difference of the percentage of value that is on property taxes, say in Western North Dakota as it may be in Eastern North Dakota, there's a difference. And so where I think we are expected more to fund things here locally than in other parts of the state. And all I ask is that, I truly believe areas where there's a strong local area in Cass County or a strong Minot area or Dickinson, that's good overall for the state. So some of that equity, I guess, in terms of how we allocate and what we value in terms of you know, the amount of revenue and where it's coming from our state.
Okay, thank you. I wish we had more time. This went really fast. We're gonna do the wrap up now. So I think we start with Scott this time, right? Or not? Okay. So, yeah, I think so.
I need coffee, but
yeah. So this is 1 minute if you want to do your wrap up.
sure, yeah, I just want to thank you guys again. You know, one of the things that I've learned over the years being in public office, my time is listening. And, you know, you guys are the experts in the home building area. And so what the needs are, the challenges are, those are, you know, that perspective is critically important. And so, Carrie and I are in a very good position. We are running unopposed. Unless there's a massive write-in campaign here in the last few weeks, you know, hopefully things work out on November 8th. But I wanted to let you know that anytime you guys have anything that you want to discuss, because at the end of the day, there's a level of service back to the community and having to understand it. It's not, I've learned that not every answer, but you can't just say, you know, sometimes it's okay when you don't know the answer because you're not gonna know the answer on everything.
Right.
That's why you look at those people that, you know, there are challenges. Please, I want to be open to listening to that, what is a critical industry. You know, obviously homeownership is probably one of the most prized things you know, in a person's life. So
Yeah.
just letting you guys know, thank you again for having us. And if any time in the future, you know, any questions or issues you want to work on, please reach
Absolutely.
out.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to seeing your data and learning more from you. I'm kind of data geek, so I'm excited to sit down with you and have that opportunity. You know, I've mentioned some of the priorities that I will have because I represent our district and members of our district, but I also stand on our GOP platform, which I'll just read them all to you, and I have copies if you would like to have better definition, but individual liberty, personal responsibility, limited government, peace through strength and the rule of law, lower taxes, the right to bear arms, family integrity, quality education, and legislative integrity. So I have copies of that platform if you want to see them.
Awesome. Okay. And we did talk about doing kind of a synopsis for interested individuals, and I know working with Kayla too at NEAB, so we'll see if we can get something put together that way. But I mean, we can certainly share our permits plus, that's the analysis. If we got your email, so if you're interested in something like that.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you to both of you, and please call us if you need anything, and if there's a specific item that you want more information on that's affecting us in this region or something, feel free to give us a holler too. So they're helpful to prepare for these forums and talking to door knocking or wherever as well, so.
That would be wonderful.
All right, well, thank you again, really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you for coming.
Yep.
So I'm the CEO of the
Yep.
HBA, and I'm also the foundation administrator for the Home Builders Care Foundation, and I'm the plan administrator for the health plan. So we run 3 organizations under this roof, and just want you to know that, and Denise knows this, you probably know a lot about it just because of Denise and I have known each other for so long, but we do a lot of stuff under this roof. We're an advocacy group for the building industry.
Mhm.
And so we collaborate, and that's the biggest thing for legislators. We are a resource. If you need data, we have data, not just opinions.
Sure.
But we have data to provide to help you understand whatever those challenges or issues are that the building industry construction is facing. So today we have some of our leadership here, and I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves. Why don't we do that first? We'll go start around.
I'm Nancy Kelly with Labor Masters, and I'm the current vice president of the Home Builders Care Foundation.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
My name is Davey, and I'm also with Labor Masters, and I'm the associate vice president of PHP.
Nice to meet you.
Sam McDonald with Cass Clay Community Land Trust and the Public Issues
Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Kozel. I'm with the HBA and I'm the Public Affairs and Education Coordinator.
Okay.
So she was the one that was hounding you. So thank you for filling out the questionnaire too. And I think we have a little more flexibility because you're by yourself today. Do you have a time limit? If-
No, fine.
Okay.
Fine.
So what we were doing is, if you wanted to just take like 2 minutes to introduce yourself and share kind of why you wanted to run, what you want to get done in office, and, you're sitting in a pretty good position too, right?
You're unopposed, yeah.
Yeah.
You're unopposed, yeah.
Yeah, so give us an idea, we were timing when we had people, but we don't necessarily have time, just 2 minutes or so.
Yeah, well, I'm Jonas, Jim Jonas, longtime West Fargo resident. I was a teacher and coach in the district for 30 years. Coached football, basketball, and track, and I was assistant in all of those. So the good thing is so many of my former graduates are now teachers in West Fargo, or business leaders, or community leaders, or working in the trades. So I really enjoy that, seeing my former students out, and so I taught social studies, world history, US history, sociology, and I've always had a deep impact or wanting to get involved in politics when my career was done. The first thing I did was ran for school board, and I just served as the president of the school board. I've been on the school board, and I was reelected to a term. I wasn't going to run for legislature until my second term was done. But I had the mayor of West Fargo, Bernie Gar's a good friend of mine. I coached his 2 kids in football. Some city commissioners approached me. Our business manager at the West Fargo High School, West Fargo Schools, Levi Buckmeyer, is the chairman of District 13 Republican Party.
Okay.
Levi played football for me, was a student of mine, ran track for me. So we sat and he knew my political aspirations, so he pushed me. And then business leaders in the community reached out to me wanting me to run. And I said, I've already put my candidacy in for the school board. And I said, so I talked to my other board members, and if it was gonna be a problem, I wasn't gonna run. But with today's technology, I'll miss 6 or 7 meetings, but I'll do those virtually. And
So it's not too bad.
Monday, we just made the change in our ordinance that I can vote, have the ability to vote.
Oh,
You know,
through the virtual.
Through virtual, yeah. So when I'm up in Bismarck, those 4 months,
Yeah,
I'll miss 7 meetings. But if it's a crucial one, I can ride back.
yeah.
So I'm deeply involved in the educational aspect of West Fargo, and I'm also community involved. Not only am I on the board of education for West Fargo Public Schools, I also serve on the West Fargo Educational Foundation Board of Directors. Our Hall of Fame, we're in the process of raising $2.5 million to start an endowment for West Fargo. So we can give it back to our teachers and students that want scholarships. So I'm also on the board of directors for the West Fargo Exchange Club, a community organization where we give back to the students, West Fargo, and teachers also. We give out snacks and we give out about $70,000 a year in aid to our elementary schools mostly. Because kids that can't afford snacks, for example, we'll give them schools a bunch of snacks, or winter clothing. I just dropped off winter clothing to Independence and South Elementary and Horace. So I think we spent $15,000 just last month on sweats and things like that. I'm also on the board of directors for West Fargo events. West Fargo is the only school district to own its own hockey rink. West Fargo Sports Arena, right to the west of the lights.
Yeah.
We're the only district to own our own hockey arena. And so West Fargo Events runs that. And then we're gonna add another sheet of ice, and we're gonna work with the city to make maybe an indoor, that next sheet of ice to the north of the arena will also be big enough in case there's a concert at the lights and the weather turns bad,
Yes.
that we can move it in there.
Nice.
So you've been out to the lights, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we're planning on,
Great.
just to the north, it'd be across from the parking ramp, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What other, I think those are, I'm missing one.
Well, something-
Very involved, and I love it,
Yeah,
because West Fargo is a great place to be, it's a great community,
yeah,
and we're growing, on the school board. Affecting you guys, I was at Horace for a volleyball game on Tuesday night. And the housing, the developments, 300 houses this year,
yeah,
and then West Fargo is gonna explode. Governor Burgum, what did he say 2 weeks ago that West Fargo could become the second biggest city in the state after the diversion's completed in 6 years? We, as a school board, are looking to buy land for another school just north of the horse racing track,
okay,
because West Fargo is gonna explode. That'll be an elementary. We've talked to several landowners, and then we're also looking for another school to the south, maybe around 64th Avenue.
okay,
And then another high school, number 4, maybe 10, 12 years from now. West of the lights, kind of, when that diversion area is done.
yeah,
We grew by 508 students this year. We're the second biggest district with 12,700 students. And we passed Fargo last year, right?
Yeah.
And Bismarck's at 13,300. We think in the next few years we'll become number 1 in terms of size. So
Wow.
with you, it's a great community.
yeah,
Fargo, West Fargo. I do have to say West Fargo is the best Fargo. Okay. Yeah. But it's the quality of life here in the metro area, right?
yeah,
The quality of life, there's so much to do and just events to go to the Bison, Concordia, Morehead State. You can go to a Davy soccer game versus Cheyenne. So and businesses. It's thriving area.
So what would you like to see? You mentioned a lot of people, and I can understand why, because it sounds like you're giving back all the time and involved in so much. What do you want to accomplish in the legislature? What are some of the things you really want to see change or impact?
Number 1 is education, educational funding. West Fargo, with our growth, we're getting, I believe this last year, we got 70% of per pupil payment. It's about $10,380 we got compared to, let's just say Mott or Minot, where they would get about $13,000 per student. And all that money goes to our teacher salaries, because we're growing so fast. What we see is, I want to work on changing the format on funding, because we're growing so fast, and rural North Dakota is losing population, right?
Yeah,
So what we see is those school districts don't want to give that money up. But if we did what like Minnesota does, their funding is based on the September 30th enrollment. So we would be on time enrollment. So that's one thing I want to do. And like I said, education's been my life. So work on education funding, teacher retention. Just this morning, a study came out by North Dakota United that 30% of teachers are thinking of leaving the profession because of pay and burnout. And the critical race theory, the politics getting involved in it. I wrote the curriculum for West Fargo Social Studies. There is no critical race theory in West Fargo. So I'll fight that. It's gonna be a challenge. Education will be priority number 1.
Okay.
And priority number 2 is economic development and workforce development. A lot of my friends and former students are business owners in West Fargo and talking about taxes and so forth. And let's see what we can do about smart regulation when it comes to taxes, cutting some of the red tape in terms of getting qualified for working positions and so forth.
yeah,
But let's be smart about the red tape.
yeah.
Uh,
How do you feel about economic incentives?
I'm for it.
Okay.
Being on the school board, we give tax breaks to like the lights, housing developments and so forth. I'm trying to think of on Cheyenne Street, the low rent, Cass County. So we've given some tax breaks, yes. So
Okay,
to get that spark to spur the business, yeah,
yeah.
all for it, yeah.
No, I appreciate hearing that.
Fair and equitable tax structures,
Yeah, It's interesting, since you wear so many hats too, and with the school board and, Mark Lemire, the former business manager,
Right.
he was, I grew up with him. He's
Oh,
from my
you're-
hometown and one of my best friends.
Right, the big
Yeah,
city,
yeah,
right?
yeah, he's just wonderful.
Always.
But for years, we have battled the 2-year property tax exemption for residential construction, new residential construction. In Fargo, a few city commissioners were always opposed to it, and many years ago, the Fargo Public Schools would come in and testify against it. And the whole purpose of it is to get young families into newly built homes. Because you're building schools,
Right.
you want rooftops around the schools, right? Neighborhoods, and you don't want necessarily, there's a place for multifamily and transitional housing. That those neighborhoods are key to safety, crime, filling schools and so on. So the property tax exemptions and remodeling for existing homes are critical to keep those neighborhoods growing and or healthy. And, and so Mark was one of the first school administrators. He was serving in Fargo on their tax exempt committee. He's like, why do you guys have a problem with this? That exemption is helping young families get it. Oh,
I
and then
agree.
all of a sudden, there was like light bulbs going all over, so we appreciate hearing
Yeah.
that.
You know, I agree. I think I put down on my answer, the American dream of owning a house.
Yep,
I come from a poverty family. My mom and dad were divorced when I was in first grade. You know, we had free lunches and the government cheese and rented and subsistence, you know.
yeah,
And but I was proud of my mom. She was strong. She was working 2 to 3 jobs to keep us fed and stuff.
yeah,
And now I live in Charleswood. I got a beautiful home in Charleswood,
yeah.
wonderful wife. So I've lived the American dream. And you know,
That's awesome.
you mentioned the low income, middle and higher, I don't know if we touched on the high income homes, the
Yeah,
high development. You know,
yeah,
West Fargo is a great example of that.
Yeah.
I live in Charleswood, the older part where we have young, older families leaving, going to Arizona, retiring, younger families moving in, kids playing. We kind of have a cul-de-sac. It's awesome to see that.
yeah,
Kids out playing
yeah,
and,
Yeah.
playing hoops or shooting a hockey stick or a hockey puck
yeah,
and so we still, because West Fargo High School, people said when Cheyenne's built, the enrollment's gonna go down. We are the second largest high school in the state. Cheyenne's number 1 with 1,600 kids. West Fargo High School has 1,500. I think Bismarck High might be in there. West Fargo's 2 or 3, but with that turnover in the old part of town,
yeah,
I'm talking about the north side, right?
yeah,
You still have that
yeah, yeah,
enrollment, strong enrollment.
yeah, that's wonderful.
So,
That is wonderful, keeping the economy healthy.
yes.
Very important. What public service achievement are you most proud of?
Right, I guess the school board being on that. You know, working hard and, people, I'm very approachable. Like if they call me if there's a problem, an issue, because I'm out at events and soccer games, football games and play. Yeah. So, and another thing of my goals on the legislature is public safety.
Okay,
You know, we see that every day. I think we need to make sure we have the resources for our first responders, our police officers, our firefighters, that they have the best equipment available. Because face it, when we deal with the first responders, it's often some of the most stressful or critical times in our life.
oh, yeah,
So we want to make sure they have great equipment and so forth. And I'm really good friends with Sheriff Johnner, Chief Otterness, and Chief Fuller in West Fargo. So that's my other goal was to make sure they have the resources
Yeah.
needed. And then Drew Wrigley has a great point that if this is an interesting fact, in the metro area, for every 44 stops the police have, the person drives away, which could result in a high-speed chase. So Drew Wrigley has a piece of legislation that I like, that if you flee and you're stopped by a police officer, you're gonna lose your car. Because just think of the safety
oh, yeah,
involved too, when they flee and, you know, kids playing in the street and so
Yeah.
forth. So I'm a hardcore when it comes to law enforcement. Support for our first responders.
Good.
So those are the
They
three.
need the support, yeah,
And then workforce development, of course, with my wife for the academy, I believe,
pick us.
yes, you know, I'm all for that. I believe you should honor the plumber as we honor the PhD. Both are skilled.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
the trades are just fantastic. I was reading in your magazine when I was waiting for every person that graduates from a trade school, 5 are retiring nationwide. So,
It's amazing. It really is. And it's a parental roadblock, really. I sometimes feel like we should do sessions for parents, so if you don't have to go to
yeah,
or your college.
I think we're starting to see that transition a little bit.
Yeah,
I know in West
Yeah.
Fargo, we're pushing that. I'm speaking again from my experience on the board,
Yeah.
we've changed our mission statement to choice ready, you
yeah,
know, whether collegiate, whether go to post-secondary
yeah,
or enter the workforce or the military, so.
yeah. Did you have a question? Or,
I always have so many questions.
okay, do you?
I do have one. So you're in a district that has rural, although could be really quickly turned into a suburb, and West Fargo. So when you go to the state and you're talking to representatives that are representing communities around Devil's Lake where the population continues to decline, and they're folks in power up there, not necessarily the representatives, are saying, nobody wants to move here, nobody wants to move here. How do you have a great conversation with them, bringing your experiences and really great successes that won't be wiped away as, well, West, you know, the state ends at Jamestown. I grew up in Bismarck, the state ends at Jamestown, I get it. But you know, how do you bring successes from West Fargo that aren't necessarily, you know, the resource rich Fargo to your Devil's Lake type communities to say, I hear you, I see you, this is how my experiences and successes.
Well, I am the Devil's Lake Satan, class of 79.
I'm a St. Mary Saint, so.
Oh, okay, it's Austin,
Wow.
there now. Same to the same. Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, Devil's Lake is a wonderful place, the quality of life there. They need to, the fishing, the hunting, the lake is a key drawing point. And I go back quite a bit, this is the first summer I've never made it back, I should say. I was supposed to golf in a couple of fundraising tournaments, but we never made it back. But meeting with the legislatures there, they need the quality of life there is their main selling point, their strong schools.
Okay, so maybe Devil's Lake isn't the best example because you see the beauty in Devil's Lake.
Yep.
How about my family out in Beach, North Dakota, Golden Valley County, where
We have just another beach person walking.
yeah, I know I was just saying we got a beach
The
here.
Buccaneers.
You know, there's a good budget for a home on the range.
Yeah,
There isn't. I mean, that's the closest thing to an economic hub that.
well, once again, I'm not very familiar with beach, but
It's got no lakes.
It's got no
Lakes.
you know, rural North Dakota has its benefits and, I'm gonna be a little stingy because we've been discriminating for 20 years when it comes to educational funding. Because of growth in West Fargo, so that's a tough question for me to answer. You know, when we've been discriminated against for 20 years in terms of funding, so.
Yeah.
I would just, the rural life, the quality of life, and I'm gonna fight for District 13 in West Fargo, so,
Yeah, well, I asked because.
but that's a good question.
Well, I went to the North Dakota Housing statewide conference last week and sat in a rural housing breakout group where the Devil's Lake area economic development gentleman said, you know, I've got all of these lots that we could build on, but nobody wants to build on them. You know, I mean, we can hardly pay them to come and build on them. Sitting next to Winner, who's saying, you know, people are driving 2 hours to work every day. And right, and I mean, you know, I was talking about, you know, we happened to be at a Minnesota conference talking about rural housing stuff, and he said, Lakes Country, everyone wants to move there. And as a North Dakotan, I'm heartbroken because he's saying, nobody wants to move to my community, so I'm just gonna, you know, pity in my pool here. Because we're not Lakes Country. I'm like, that breaks my heart as a North Dakotan,
Yeah.
not from Lakes Country, where I saw value in my state.
Yeah.
So I know you're District 13, but I mean, those are the folks that you're working with.
Just an article in the forum today about workforce development in rural North Dakota. Once again, they were talking about quality of life. I think they were talking with, trying to think of the cities, it wasn't Beach. they were small rural where they need to form. Trying to remember, I mean, used to have, when I was teaching, I could have photographic memory. But now I've been on it for a few years, but, they did have that on workforce development in small towns. And they kept talking about people driving, like you said, hours come to work.
So,
And they're losing businesses too, because your person's gonna retire, nobody wants to open that restaurant
yeah,
in Beach.
keep the grocery store going.
So the state, I'm trying to remember how they said the state needs to come in and the county needs to come in and try to make a plan on inheritance. I can't remember the phrase they used. When a business is gonna leave, when a person's gonna retire, the exact phrase they used.
Either. Sure. Well, I have one more question. Do we have one at 11:15 or not?
No.
Okay, okay, I just want to make sure. What do you think is the largest challenge and opportunity for the legislature as an entity? And what's the best way to overcome that challenge or opportunity going forward? With your,
Coming session,
yeah,
well, I would say the workforce shortage is really crucial to the state. Getting that private, the businesses, the educational institutions, whether it be a college, a university, a trade school or our high schools, working together to, along with nonprofits and organizations, come with innovative ways to help.
yeah,
Like I said, whether it's lowering some of the red tape to become a substitute teacher or working in an office setting and so forth. But we have to be smart about that, you know, with our background checks and so forth
yeah,
in terms of education.
yeah.
Labor masters, I'm sure you have that problem. Do you have that problem too?
For background checks?
Do you guys, I mean, background checks or are there qualifications for certain levels like office work and things?
Yeah, we do mostly general labor, light
Okay.
industrial and production type stuff, so we just have a handful of clients that require background checks. And we do have a company that does them almost immediately, so very narrow focus.
Yeah, with our substitute teachers and so forth, there's some
Yeah.
hoops we gotta go through to make sure safety of children and so forth.
Yeah.
And the Career Academy is a great example of getting the workforce development out there, you know, showing people that trades are a great career also. I was on your, I know the expo you guys do.
Yeah.
I've been there every year.
Yeah.
I really like the summer camp,
Regina Camp?
Gardena, yeah, that was 10 days. Did the kids go 10 days?
Yep, it's over at M State in Moorhead. And yeah, it's volunteers and instructors, but they get to see a piece of every part of the industry.
Mhm.
And we had 16 kids this year, so, we could have up to 27, I think. But a lot of the volunteers said that they feel like that's too many. They had the best class when it's a little smaller. So one thing I wanted to mention to you, going off that skilled labor and you're mentioning the expo on the camp that we do. For the building industry, one of our biggest challenges is we can't bring the youth onto the job site under the age of 18. And so we've been working with Dr. Jonas forever on this. And so we put legislation in play probably 3 sessions ago. Worked with the legislative council, different things. And it was kind of a big fail at the time because our industry, like others, are trying to work through the schools. So, and Denise has been super on helping us get there. Cause we feel like next spring, we're gonna be able to offer some sort of apprenticeship through Fargo Public Schools and West Fargo Public Schools. So, and as a legislator, it's come up again about bringing legislation forward. And I'm like, I don't think we need legislation. North Dakota and Minnesota are 2 states that have a waiver, a Department of Labor waiver. The federal law is 18 for job site, for construction, manufacturing, and transportation, I think it is, right? So those three industries are highly regulated where you can't bring somebody in out on the job site. Which is ridiculous because you can stand in front of a fryer and
Right.
you can tattoo and ear pierce and be in a hair salon, all of which are working with chemicals and needles and different. But, and we get it, some of the common sense. We're not gonna move the needle federally. The waiver, and just so you're aware, that state waiver in North Dakota and Minnesota that would allow us to get them onto the job site, the paperwork is so cumbersome. It's not worth it for the employer to do it that way. So that's a challenge that just to kind of bring that we face somehow in job insurance. How do we address that as well?
So we're thinking, because you're 18 years old, or you're juniors or seniors, so you're thinking sophomore on up, maybe?
Right, because really, even the middle schoolers, where to just bring them out and let them tour, we've done different things where classes have come to the Prada homes during the construction process
Okay.
to show the phases of construction and then, you know, the showcase of the home when it's finally done. But, the challenge is that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, middle schoolers are the ones that are choosing the classes. We need to talk to the sixth, seventh, and eighth grade ages. Because at the eighth grade level, in the fall, that's when they're choosing their classes for their freshman year. So we've lost them if we haven't gotten to them yet. And the way the school programming works now is everybody's talking careers, you know. as a
Academy
kid.
model, yeah.
Yeah, and which is beautiful, that's what we love, but we, it really poses a problem for us to introduce youth into our industry. And we would love to see that by the time they're maybe 16, that they're allowed to be, that we can, under supervision and safety parameters, that they get to try forklift. And I'll tell you right now, my 19-year-old daughter has been working for the city of Fargo, and she's driven a payloader, a backhoe, and a forklift, and she is thinking she's like super cool. She thinks, she's like, I'm doing a man's job, and, you know, and I mean, she's a NDSU student in business, but she loves what she's doing just to make money while she's going to school. I never dreamed that this kid would want to do something like that. And she's like, I could get an awesome summer job with the experience I'm getting now. So,
Because if you have the expo, yeah, I've seen the kids over at the expo. Those
Yeah.
are ninth graders, I think, right?
yeah, some of the smaller schools bring young, they'll
Okay.
go eighth grade, and some will bring their whole, they'll go with seventh to 12, kind of depends on the size of the school.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. And under proper supervision, and I have no doubt that it would be, yeah, I have no problem with that. Because I've seen how responsible kids can be,
or irresponsible, or the employer can be irresponsible, yeah. So
well, if you got good teacher,
Yeah.
good teacher and supervisors, they'll be.
Yeah.
Well taken care of.
Yeah,
'Cause I'm speaking from experience, most of my friends are teachers and coaches are on the hardcore side,
oh, okay. Yeah,
so.
but yeah,
Yeah,
so
I agree,
it's a challenge for us.
because we're going the academy model now,
Yep,
we're changing, so kids will be choosing, you know, kind of, if it's an engineering or a tech career or health career.
yeah, yep, yeah, and I know, I mean, some of those health careers too, they deal with the same kind of thing sometimes, but yeah, it's just really a challenge for the building industry though, because most of our employers are small companies. They're not a Sanford where they can have these training programs in place and maybe have the more opportunity and freedoms to bring kids in for introduction.
Sure.
It's, you know, the Kochman brothers of the world, or, you know, Gunkelman's, that it's a family operation, and they're all willing to do apprenticeships, and they have lead carpenters, and they'd like to bring them on. But the other obstacle is job insurance, is it not? That the costly in workman's comp, those are obstacles for those small employers to have to cover that and the risk. So that's another thing that we would like to address, how is there programming or something? And I know, Dr. Jonas, through the Commerce Department, there's funding different things that we're looking at, but how can we facilitate it so these employers can have the least amount of
Red tape.
red tape, so they can show exactly what this individual could be doing as a career and how lucrative it is, and within those safety parameters, but
I just met with the work safety insurance guys 2 days ago, and that did come up, the red tape. You know, Governor Burgham's given some of the orders to, let's see what we can do with that, with common sense and with common sense.
yeah.
And, safety to see what we can do. Cause cause 98% of our businesses in North Dakota are 20 employees or less, right? So that would be like a construction company,
Yeah.
maybe a smaller one.
Yep,
Not Roars, I'm sure Roars has way more than that.
they have teams, yeah, there's that.
But, those are some of the things that was,
Yeah.
and I enjoy these meetings because I don't know everything. One of my old football coaches told me, from Devil's Lake Satan, Pat Simmers, he was
Oh,
AD at NDSU assistant AD, listen to learn to lead.
Yeah.
So when I was running for school board, we had a lunch at Spitfire, and he said, if you're going into become a leader in the community, you listen to learn to lead. You don't know everything. Sit down with people and look and learn. So
Yeah,
yeah, and
that's very great.
I have an open door. I will have an open door once I'm elected. So like I said, I
Okay,
believe that we can do some of that red tape cut
yeah,
and get the kids out there to see things. And I'm all for education.
yeah,
And if that can help our skilled workforce, which we greatly need.
yeah, we do, yeah, we do. Well, this is wonderful. Do you have any other questions or?
No,
Well, it's been a pleasure. I
Yeah.
enjoy learning and listening and
Well, and feel free to use us as a resource if you need data. Right now, there's a statewide housing study underway, NDSU, and I think there's a consultants out in Bismarck working on it. But it's about affordability and the shortage of workforce housing and entry-level housing, that sort of thing. There's one going on for the region here. MetroCog is overseeing that. And so they used a data research company out of the East Coast for building permit data, and everybody that was on the virtual meeting went, why wouldn't you talk to the Home Builders Association and the realtors here locally to see what their data totally conflicted? And I'm like, there's another firm that studies multifamily, and because of the affordable rental housing and that sort of thing. So we publish a Permits Plus that studies the 15 markets, the metro wide, and then all the bedroom communities. And you can see the ebbs and flow of when material prices are starting to skyrocket, or specifically interest rates, when they fluctuate, how damaging it is. And so our goal is to keep the construction industry healthy. If you keep that healthy in the region, you have a very strong economy
Yeah.
here. So, and statewide, construction is so important to the statewide economy. So,
were the interest rates gonna go up today?
uh,
I heard that.
really?
Maybe they might be going up again.
Oh, wow. Last I heard they were around 6%.
Yes,
Yeah,
your
That's
young
me.
home buyers that,
oh,
I just hate that because, you know, West Fargo, we have those new families coming in and the American dream
yeah,
and then you're paying rent.
yeah, not investing in anything.
Yes, it's not an investment. Like Denise's brother is very successful with Magnum Steel. And
Okay,
he's still renting. And
here's the one.
we tried to get him into at least buying a condo in West Fargo.
Yeah,
That you don't have to do the lawn or whatever.
yeah,
'Cause he travels the state a lot.
yeah,
He's out in Minot now working, and so we've been trying to tell him, because you're putting all that money where you
Yeah.
can be buying that.
It's,
He's paying someone else's mortgage.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is really unfortunate. You know, the owning a home is is the American dream. I mean, that's the largest investment that most people make in their lifetime, so. But it's getting very, very difficult to achieve that, so. But we look forward to working with you.
Yeah, I'm very
Yeah, thank you.
willing to learn and.
Yeah.
And I'll learn more about beef.
Well, I'm Bryce Johnson. I'm the CEO for the Home Builders Association. I'm also the plan administrator for the F-M Home Builders Health Plan and Trust, which is a member benefit. It's a health plan, self-funded, that covers about 6,500 lives, something like, we're one of the largest self-funded plans in the state. And I'm also the foundation administrator for the Home Builders Care Foundation, which is the charity or the white hat of the HBA. They give scholarships and go into neighborhoods and rehabilitate neighborhoods and work on workforce development, getting youth into our industry. So they have a lot going on the foundation side as well. So we have 3 organizations under this group that are operated by a staff of 8, and then a multitude of volunteers that contribute time and labor and effort and financial support. So we're very happy to have you here today, and we welcome you to be under the HBA roof. I'm gonna have everyone introduce themselves before I kind of get into the kind of the structure of how we're gonna run this today. Elena, would you like to start with your company, how you're involved in the HBA, and your name, of course?
Okay, Elena Charlton, I'm with Good and Company, we're a wholesaler here in Fargo and a corporate officer in Minneapolis. And I currently sit on the board of directors as liaison for the Freedom Homes. And then I'm also sit on the events committee.
I'm Nancy Kelly with Labor Masters here in Fargo, and I'm the vice president of the Home Builders Care Foundation.
I'm Sylvia Lunsky with Design Direction, and I'm currently the past president of the Home Builders Care Foundation.
I'm Ian Beaton, also with Labor Masters and the associate vice president of HBA.
And McDonald with Cass Lake Community Land Trust and on the Public Issues Committee with HBA.
John Oswald, Senior Life Director at Home Builders and North Dakota Construction. And also am Vice Chair of the Community Land Trust. So, yeah, that would plug in.
And I'm Elizabeth Kozel with the HBA. I'm the Public Affairs and Education Coordinator here.
Okay, wonderful. And then Chris is our EVP and photographer. All right. So how we do this is we'll have each of you do a 2-minute introduction on just what you want to accomplish, what things concern you, or just a little bit about yourself. Elizabeth will have a yellow card for when you get to that 30-second mark at the end of the 2 minutes, and then the red card for a hard stop. Just finish your sentence or finish your thought on that. And then we will also do a Q&A. And we'll just do a 60-second answer for those. Again, 30-second mark, the yellow card and the red card. And then when we're done with our questions, we'll do closing comments, do a 60-second again. For the members that are here, most everybody here is in some part of or in a role of leadership with the HBA or the foundation or the health plan. So these are all very committed and engaged members at your meeting today. So we're happy to have them here as well. And if anybody has questions, feel free to just jump in or flag me or something if you want to ask a question. So let's begin first with introductions, and we'll 2 minutes. So Jorin, if you would like to start.
Okay.
Go ahead.
That'd be fine. Hello, everybody. My name is Jorin Johnson. I'm in the financial services field, insurance and investments, and have been my entire career, so almost 30 years. Hate to say that. Time goes by fast. I'm in District 41, as you can see. We talked a little bit about the mapping, so it's just on the other side of 25th Street there. At one point, maybe 15, 20 years ago, I was vice chair, so I started dipping my toes in the water of local politics. Timing probably wasn't right, you know, young family, that type of thing. We're recently empty nesters, I guess you call it. So, you know, I can go back to maybe some of my passions, and politics is one of my passions. Getting into the fray, and I know Michelle and I know Kyle, and the seat was held by a Democrat. And so it's important for me to step up and see if we can't take that back for the Republican seat. I am a proponent of the traditional platform of the Republicans. It's interesting because the platform today is a little different than it was 15, 20 years ago. You know, it's interesting how it's just been kind of softened up a little bit, tightened up, shortened up. But that's okay. There's still a vast difference between the two parties, probably greater now than it's ever been. So I will be a staunch supporter of that platform and what that stands for. We could talk about that at some point in the future. So the race is just 4 weeks away, and anybody here who's District 41, appreciate your vote.
All right, thank you. Michelle.
So my name is Michelle Strinden. Thank you so much for having us today. And I've served one term on 2 sessions in Bismarck. So my first race was in 2019. I have been born and raised in North Dakota. I was born in Grand Forks, raised in Bismarck. So I've been a lifelong North Dakotan. My parents both were from Beulah, North Dakota. So strong roots in the state. And my husband and I have 4 children. My husband Tom and I have 4 children, and we've lived in District 41 for 26 years. So we have not strayed too far from our home district, and we love it in Fargo. I love the people of North Dakota, and public services is something that is very strong in my family, and so it seemed important for me to go out and to do that as well for the people that I love in the state and support them and represent them. Some of the issues that I'm really focused on for next session are workforce development, of course. Childcare is obviously one of, I think, the biggest issues that we'll be facing, and most people are talking about that right now. Democrats are talking about it, Republicans are talking about it. I think it'll be a real bipartisan opportunity to really make some headway in that way. And the governor's office obviously has come up with a plan. Legislative colleagues are also working on that, and I happen to be on that working committee. And education, behavioral health would be 2 other areas I'm very focused on, strengthening in education and also improving our behavioral health system.
All right, thank you. Maybe just to start off, and again, just interrupt if you have a question you want to ask. Give us an idea of what public service achievement you're most proud of. Do you have experience already in the legislature? So whatever the case, but some sort of public service achievement that you've been most proud of. And we'll go ahead and start with you, Michelle. We'll take turns.
Okay, that's a great question. One of the things I think, and I mentioned strengthening education, is something I'm passionate about. I have a background in education and counseling also. I received a counseling master's degree and a secondary ed degree from the University of North Dakota. And policy related to reading is very important to me. Our reading proficiency rates are only 42% in the state right now. That means that only 42% of our kids are reading proficiently. So we have a real opportunity to work on this. And I've passed 2 pieces of legislation. Both are working towards improving reading proficiency and literacy in the state of North Dakota. And those are passed overwhelming majorities, bipartisan.
All right, thank you.
I don't think I've done anything for public service. Definitely volunteered a great deal over the course of my professional life, but other than being vice chair for my district for a few years, I don't think I have anything else that would qualify.
Oh, okay, okay. I mean, even any projects or anything like that.
Yeah, again, volunteering, various organizations throughout the years and memberships, and Superior Insurance was actually a member of HBA for many, many years, so.
Okay.
Generate a list if you'd like, please.
Oh, yeah. No, thank you, that's okay. And then another, just another avenue of interest is, give us an example of maybe an initiative that you worked on that was not successful, that you would like to pursue and try it again, see if you can get it to, if it has the ability to move forward, what would you do? We'll start with Jordan.
An initiative that I've worked on,
Yeah, that maybe wasn't as successful as you'd like it to be.
I'm having a hard time with this question.
Sorry.
Only because I haven't, been in that position for, public service.
Okay.
Wanted to join the military, but I blew my knee in high school, so the recruiter stopped calling. It's just something that I was, very, very focused on becoming financially independent and geared towards my family. Lifting or getting us in a different direction, right? A new tangent for financial security of my family was very important. And we've since achieved that. And so that was basically my focus for 30 years.
Yeah. And it's wonderful running for office. It's a huge accomplishment and commitment in itself. So that says a lot as well. So, and we're thankful for people that run because goodness, we know that you go through quite a bit when you get there. So, Michelle.
Thank you for the question. I think one of the things, if we're just, I can bring out just some legislative work that I've done, and it's unfortunate, you don't have that really to speak about yet. We're hoping you do soon. One of the things I proposed, I guess in the last session, was an educational freedom bill. And I'm a strong proponent of educational freedom, giving parents a little bit more power in the right to choose where their children go to school. And North Dakota actually is one of the very last in this area in the state, in the nation, actually. And so I'm going to be continuing to work on policy that would give our parents more choice in their children's education. I feel that, for instance, if our kids are not being taught how to learn how to read in their public school, they should be able to go to another public school where they would be taught more effectively. So that's something I hope to bring back. I did propose a bill that was defeated, and it was called the ESA bill, and it's basically a savings account, an educational savings account.
Okay, thank you. Thinking about the future, what issue is North Dakota going to be dealing with 10 years from now? And how can we, the HBA, help you maybe prepare? And I think start with Michelle on this one.
Okay, one of the things I think is extremely important for our region, particularly as we think about Fargo-Moorhead, is the Red River Water Supply Project. It's a huge issue for me. I think I even commented on it in your questionnaire. We've done some work with the diversion, obviously. We were able to get federal funding. The state supported this funding as well to a large degree. It was a public-private partnership. But I know that in the future, for economic development, the Red River water supply will be fundamental in allowing our region to grow.
Very good. Jorin?
10 years from now, we might be talking about some of the same things we were talking about 10 years ago. Workforce development, when I think back to, after I graduated at NDSU, my wife and I left for 4 years to the state of Washington, for opportunity. I remember when we moved back, and I forced her to move back, against her will. It was looking at the job openings in Bismarck or Fargo, where would we go? And, there might have been a dozen in Bismarck and there might have been 2 dozen in Fargo. Well, things have changed a lot in those 30 years in the sense that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity, and yet we still can't attract enough workers. But at least we're heading in the right direction. So I think that'll be an issue in 10 years. I think North Dakota is on kind of an island in the middle of the United States, and we need to be able to tell people our story.
Thank you. Nancy, did you want to expand on that one at all? The workforce thing here?
What we talked about earlier,
Yeah,
as far as the percentages.
yeah.
One of the things that nobody really wants to address is the fact that 61% of able-bodied people are working and the other percent isn't, the 39%. And it's my thought that that 39% is getting paid too much to stay home.
Certainly have.
So that would address a real short-term need, you know, in North Dakota that we have, where we're not gonna watch these kids go from kindergarten, you know, to 12th grade and try to get them in the right career path that would, you know, help us out and help our members out. But immediately speaking, when we have 39% that are sitting at home, what can we do about that?
Yeah, I mean, everyone says the same thing, workforce development, but.
We have a workforce and they're not working.
Right, so
And
it's,
is that,
I mean, it's
that's
just,
federal?
it's just a
sounds
word to
like-
say, but what's.
Yes,
Well, and there's state programs and county programs and, you know, all the programs that we pay people, you know, to stay home, whether it's childcare, whether it's food stamps, whether it's rental assistance, heating assistance, name all the assistances we have.
Yeah.
That is keeping people from working. That's the biggest barrier to workforce right now. I would agree with you.
Did you want to expand on that at all, or are there areas that the state could look at?
I got something. Why couldn't the state look at something for workforce development like they do with student loans? You take a student loan out, you go through college, and then you have 6-month grace period to find a job. And then your payment starts immediately. Isn't there something that can get introduced at the state level that says, if you apply for some type of unemployment or life aid, we'll keep you on it for 6 months or for a year. And at that year mark, each month, we'll take away until you're sufficient enough to where you don't need any more aid. Is there anything like that we can do? Because, yeah, I mean, we got people here and people can work, but they're on so much benefits. There's not an end to it. And I think the Clinton administration actually removed all or a majority of these financial benefits that individuals can have. So why is it that we're keeping people from working by paying them not to work? Why can't we start reducing some of that and actually set governmental aid up to prop people up to succeed while helping them? And then as soon as they're there, you know, it's just like student loans. I mean, it's literally the same thing.
Well, I mean, I agree with you almost entirely and exclusively. I can think of a member in my distant family who sat on the couch for 2 years until his employment benefits ran up and then he went to work. Very frustrating. You know, you hate to see that in your own family, and you know it's happening everywhere. That's more of a federal thing too. And then we're so close to the state lines. I do know that in the past, people have decided to live in Moorhead because the benefits might be $50, $100, $300 more on that side of the river. So they're going to go over there. You know, I know of cases like that. So, I mean, we would have to be careful that if we introduced anything to North Dakota, you know, people aren't just going to exit the state as well. And we're still having an issue. But I'm with you. I think government's got it wrong. I think our grandparents would roll over in their grave if they knew that people were taking free money and not working for it. Now, you get in a jam, you know, we need to help people out, no doubt. But when it's easy to get like that, I don't know.
Michelle?
Yeah, I think, you know, in general, I think obviously all of the federal dollars and even the state dollars that were coming out of COVID has only exacerbated the workforce shortage in North Dakota. And I think we see that all over the country, obviously. And so, you know, I think this is it speaks to the difference, I think, real clearly between a Republican and a Democratic approach to government, where we do provide some safety nets for people, but then at the same time, really want to equip our people with the opportunities that they need, the education that they need, so that they can get out into the workforce and have productive careers. Because ultimately, that is the most healthy place for our population to be. And, you know, I think one of the things I'm really excited about that will be available to North Dakotans is this new, in Cass County in particular, we have a new career academy. I think if we start really looking at career and technical education and really encouraging our students. I know our teachers are ready to really prepare our students for workforce needs, industry needs. We need to partner with industry and try to develop a workforce that's appropriate.
Yeah, we're desperate. Did you have a question?
Along that line, we've been for years, every session, we propose or come along, piggyback with somebody else on trying to make sure that if there's a legislative way to help us get kids at least into internships or something when they're 16. It's a little bit of a federal law problem and there's ways to piggyback it on, with the Career Academy coming on board. The problem with builders is a lot of builders are 1 or 2 people. And if you burden them down with too much paperwork, they're gonna say, the hell with it, we're not gonna do it. So I think we would definitely like everybody's help with trying to figure out a simplified system to help, because kids can go to McDonald's when they're 16 and be in front of a fryer. You just want to have a skill set in their hand and, but that's a big key for us, is trying to get these kids at least introduced. I mean, my goal is down the road is just to have kids have had the experience that say when they graduate from high school, they're not gonna waste 4 years in college because they didn't know what they wanted to do. That through the Career Academy, at least from the trade side, and that includes x-ray technicians, nursing, whatever. It's not just our industry, it's any of the trades that say don't require a 4-year education. That the majority of kids have been exposed to it. So they say, you know what, I still want to go to a 4-year college. I want to become a lawyer, a teacher, or whatever. But the other ones have got a chance to say, you know what, I like that plumbing unit that I had when I was, going to some classes at the Career Academy. And I'll graduate with probably little or no debt. So I'm not a big one on debt forgiveness for education whatsoever. I think it's a lot of bad career choices that people made. Tough shit, that's their problem.
Was that a question?
I paid for it. No, but I mean, it's still coming back to, I think part of today is letting you know what our issues are.
Yep.
And if there's any thoughts that you have on the younger kids getting the experience, we really welcome any assistance.
Yes, I would agree. Can I
Yep,
love to
it's your
respond to
turn.
that? This is a passion of mine as well, of course, education, I've mentioned many times, but there's a lot of things that have been introduced in terms of paperwork and testing and all kinds of issues I don't think really are giving us value for that dollar. We have, there's just a lot of hurdles, I think, that are being put in the way of teachers, and actually those wanting to teach are having to go through praxis exams, which I never had to take a praxis exam as an educator 20 years ago. All of a sudden we have to pay $200 to pass a praxis exam, and if you don't pass it, then you have to take it again. You get to take it again. So you get to pay $600 now to the testing organization so that you can get a waiver that says you can teach if you can't pass these exams. So you are speaking my language when we talk about this kind of a thing. It's something that really upsets me. And, there shouldn't be, one of the things I think the Career Academy will be key in this area. It's already happening in Moorhead. They've got an outstanding building there, and it's really exciting to see what they're doing. But as long as you're a licensed trade, there's no reason why you can't have an internship or an apprenticeship in that licensed trade. So it would be something I would completely support, and we need to do more of it, because I think that many students are, I think people in education, especially those that are maybe gifted in these types of trades, they may be for whatever reason on the wrong path, and I think it can only lead to, obviously many issues, but we need to get them working.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, respond to his question?
Yeah,
Well, whatever it was.
yeah, yeah.
Or,
Pretty broad.
I guess so.
For your comments, yeah.
It's interesting. My father was a carpenter, so I remember growing up with it, helping him build houses and cabinets, and I'm still a woodworker by heart and do a lot of it throughout the years, and very proud of it, actually. And so, one wonders, how did I get into the professional side of the business? I'd asked him when I was 18, I said, if you'd move to Fargo or Bismarck, because he was in a small town around Napoleon, I said, we could do this deal. We start building some houses. And you look back the last 30 years, man, that could have been a great decision because of the growth, but in the 80s, things were pretty stagnant. I don't know that there's a quick solution. I actually think the universities are hurting themselves. Tuition rates are just going through the roof over a number of years, and it's going to become more and more unaffordable to go in that direction. And people are going to have to decide to do something different. So, just be a bullhorn out there for the trades and what you can do. And I actually think what's happening there, in conjunction with, I think, what is a rising income for the trades. Am I wrong there? I think
Yeah.
some of you folks are starting to make some pretty serious coin. And I think things are going to start to balance out, maybe naturally. I don't know. I hope so.
Thank you. And to your point on the four-year schools, not only is it more expensive, but they're not even in the classroom. A lot of the professors are hosting virtual classes. One student that I'm aware of has 0 in-person classes, which I think is super damaging just in terms of your social ability skills and things like that. So, going back to the workforce side, and kind of where John was coming from, there is a North Dakota and a Minnesota Department of Labor waiver that an employer can fill out to get past that age 18 minimum on the job site. But the paperwork is extraordinarily cumbersome. And one of the issues is the North Dakota's DOL rep. I don't know if he is retired, but we couldn't even get through to him to get some assistance or employers to encourage using that waiver. He had his Hawaiian shirt on when we met with him. After 4 meetings, set up 4 meetings with 27 people, he finally showed, and he was in a Hawaiian shirt with the background, and I'm like, we're not gonna get anywhere here. So it's just some insight for you to be aware of, that in the Commerce Department and that Department of Labor representative from North Dakota, there's some sort of disconnect there between ensuring employers can get that waiver. And the bottom line is they want to run their businesses and they want to introduce youth into industries, and somehow we need to fix that issue. And I don't know that it's a legislative task or if it's pressure from legislators, but it's definitely a problem. But another issue that comes along with it is we're working with the schools to try to set up internships. That's the only way we can do it right now. And what is now a major obstacle is the job insurance, workers' comp, excuse me. That is a problem. Do you wanna ask if there, like, how can a legislator or legislators work together to influence what would be necessary to help employers so that they can have that, if we get in that 16, 18 range of getting the kids out on a job site through an internship, but then you've got that situation.
There might be a way to kind of get the insurance side of things, like an umbrella policy of some sort that would be either offered by the state. I mean, it's kind of interesting. The state needs workers, we all need workers, so, let's figure out a way to make this work so that maybe if you, whether you've got we all know that probably the easiest way to do this is to somewhat piggyback back to like in this case, if we're in Cass County or so, you might just, as a small employer, you might have to say, okay, I might have to fill out at least a little bit of paperwork that says, I have workman's comp. Although a self-employed person does not have to have it on themselves. A lot of people do, so that when you cut off your finger, you get a little bit of compensation. But figure out a way like an umbrella policy of some sort that the state could work with, or, again, it's gotta be relatively simple. Even to a sense that if I was a framer here and I wanted to try, get some young kids or a young kid, the exposure, I could come to my home builder's office and say, okay, where's that form I need to fill out that would possibly, fit the need? But it's gotta be simple. The KISS theory with us is pretty basic. And
Are you telling me that, you have to go jump through different hoops to hire somebody between 16 and 18 than maybe?
we can't,
We can't.
we can't even hire them.
There can't be on the job site.
Federal law is 18.
Federal law is 18.
Construction, transportation, and manufacturing are the three industries that have to abide by the 18-year-old age minimum on a job
Are you
site.
dangerous?
Yes, but yet you can be near a fryer and a tattoo parlor and other things.
So the waiver then is, which department is
Well,
controlling the waiver? Because one of the things I think that could be done is we obviously could offer legislation in this for some sort of bill related to this very issue. And that's usually what, and why maybe I would encourage that to happen. Perhaps, sometimes when you introduce legislation, people tend to listen and
well,
get the
you
players
also
on the
gotta be
table.
careful what you ask for. We had that.
That's true.
Last session.
I would want to sit down, honestly, I would want to get into the governor's office, sit down perhaps with somebody in commerce that would be in charge of this portfolio and start to brainstorm solutions. Because obviously, I feel like you have a partner in the governor's
Well,
office.
and I wanna say we're almost this close,
Okay,
and yet we're still not there.
right,
Yeah.
because they are working feverishly to open up doors for workforce. So I do think if there is an issue with
Yeah.
the 16 to 18 window, I would think we could craft legislation that would somehow cover that. But it would be to find the right people in the room, number one, identify
Yeah,
your representative or your senator. And then there is some, important work behind the scenes that takes place too, because you have to make sure you have supporters in both the House and the Senate so that these bills can move forward.
And we did introduce, but actually Senator Kyle Davison
Okay.
carried it, but I think there was a bit of a disconnect in terms of what was trying to be achieved.
Do you
And
think it could be reintroduced?
possibly, I know Western North Dakota is interested, Williston, some of those areas their legislators are interested in pursuing something again
Great.
too. So
Yeah,
definitely, we will, reach out because
I'd love to. And I think if Kyle has done the work, he's our senator on appropriations.
yeah,
And,
Yeah.
that's an important committee in Bismarck, and I'm on the appropriations committee on the House side. So to have two people in those committee rooms, it's an important place and we can make a difference in legislation.
And-
It is important.
and again, to highlight the challenge, if we can't bring them out as a 16-year-old onto the job site, what we're hoping to do is even just introduce youth. So under supervised and controlled conditions so that maybe they get to operate a forklift and get to feel what some of the equipment and different things are like out on a job site.
Well,
Within safety.
Speaking to the umbrella, to me, this would be, we have a legacy fund. We have, we do have some mechanisms within the legacy fund that I think could be utilized to perhaps fund a stream like that. We have legacy streams that are, definitely one of the legacy streams that we're looking at doing is work on workforce. And so I think the Republicans and the Democrats together are ready to utilize some of those funds. I wouldn't be you know, I obviously I want to protect the legacy fund. The principal needs to be the principal, but I do think a part of our interest can go to workforce development programs. That and even, you know, things like childcare. We're looking at childcare too, because it's a definite barrier to work and we need to solve it. And we're very fortunate, we're very blessed in North Dakota to have the legacy fund to be able to fund some of these really important things that can move the state forward. So that's an important issue for sure.
Yes, well, I'll make a note of that. I am, one last question. I'm just watching the time here, for our next session too. And I'm thinking, Jorin, we start with you again on this, but what is the one thing you've heard from the last session, that you took interest in, and if you are elected, you would like to work on?
Last session. I don't know.
I'm a go for North Dakota.
Yeah. You know, like one of the reasons I got involved was, you know, the COVID and the response from the federal government and the state. It's interesting, going back to the last question, you know, I've got written here, strengthening our rights as a state and diminishing federal authority and influence will always be top of mind when considering legislation. And so when you're hearing that, you know, it's coming from the feds, it's like, that proves my case. You know, what's good for North Dakota should be good for North Dakota. If it's something we want, we should be able to do it. So that's one of the reasons. You know, tax reform, I think the Republicans are always pushing for ways to make taxes a little more fair, spread it a little more evenly, you know, find ways to propel growth, incentivize people to come to the state. You know, when you think of taxes, if I were to say, tell me 3 tax-free states, I bet each and every one of you could name them off. Wouldn't it be great if North Dakota was one of them? I think Alaska comes to mind, Florida comes to mind, Texas comes to mind. It'd be nice if North Dakota came to mind. And maybe someday we'll get there too. I don't know all the issues that was talked about last session, but.
Okay, thank you. Michelle?
I think obviously tax cuts is a great point. Income tax, another one would be South Dakota. And South Dakota is a direct competitor of North Dakota. We compete a lot with cities like Rapid City, Sioux Falls, obviously. These are right in our backyard, and industry looks at, you know, most areas that they can build an industry, bring in industry and develop economically. So we need to be competitive. I support Governor Burgum's income tax reduction. Also, property tax is another thing. This legislature has worked on that. We've introduced legislation like Operation Prairie Dog to, you know, use gas taxes to apply them to our infrastructure needs. We need to continue to work on property tax as well. And then behavioral health, I just have to finish with that. It's a huge issue. It's something that I'm working in. I was on the acute site committee, and we've been really delving into this issue and needing more better services provided to people in crisis in the state.
Thank you. Are we okay to wrap up? Okay, okay, Michelle, would you like to start the closing in 60 seconds?
Yeah, thank you. Again, thank you so much. I so appreciate hearing from you and learning about some of these challenges in your industry. It's how we actually propose legislation that works for North Dakota. So we have one of the most accessible legislatures in the state, in the nation rather. And we would love to work with you on these issues. I'd love to go back. As I mentioned, I have a seat on appropriations, and it's an important place to be. We need a seat at the table. Fargo needs a seat at the table in the House Appropriations Committee, and I would love to go back and serve another 4 years.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, we need more people like Michelle, that's for sure. Thank you for having me here. You know, I'm a friend to the trades, to the builders. You know, my highlight a little bit of my past. You know, when I think of the HBA, for some reason, Terry Becker's name comes to mind because down at my farmstead, when I finished it after my father passed, Terry wrote his name, graffitied his name on our wall. And so I smile about it and we laugh about it today. So, you know, it's good to listen and learn and hear what you guys have to say. And I'll be a friend and a proponent of yours as much as I can be. So I think our values may align, and in a lot of areas. Other than that, if you're in District 41, I'll take the contribution. That's the hardest part of this campaign. It's really, really interesting. And would appreciate your vote.
All right, thank you very much. Well, thank you to both of you. And again, we are a resource. We have data. If you need data on a topic and because of a bill, reach out to us. We are happy to, we do a ton of studies. And we are watching right now, there's a statewide housing study, there is a regional housing study, all of which it's about housing, affordable housing, and then the strange things that they make assumptions on with the building industry, with construction. And so we're happy to be involved in those and provide them data. They got a lot of their data sources, they use the East Coast. And everybody around the table challenged some of the data that they were putting forward, and lo and behold, we got a phone. I suggested maybe they check with, there's three, the realtors, the HBA, and appraisal services, and lo and behold, we got a phone call from them finally.
Who was,
So
if you don't mind my asking, who was behind the?
I can't remember, it started with a P, like, okay, Polk surveying. It was out of the EY, but it's a Minneapolis consultant that's being used in the study. I'm referring to the MetroCog regional study, and yeah, it was.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, I can share more later, but yeah, so, but the thing is we have real data. We've done studies and we have the real data. It's not a subjective opinion on how important the construction industry, we're all housers in this building, and that what we do is an economic engine for the state. And if you keep that economic engine healthy, you gotta have the skilled workforce, and those economic incentives that work in the downtowns or getting young families into new construction, if it's a property tax exemption that way, but they're all very valuable. And that reinvestment comes back in growing the tax base. And you have schools popping up then, but you gotta have rooftops. You have to have commercial business growing around those schools too. So it's an important industry. So we have to shout it out a lot of times, I think. But anyway, so please use us. It's wonderful that thank you for serving and thank you for running. That's a big deal in itself, just to run. So we appreciate it.
Well, thank you. If I could just add too, if there's ever bills that you see that are of interest to you that come forward during the session, please come to Bismarck.
Oh, we will.
And
We appreciate that.
But yeah, you are invited. We are there because I can tell you that it makes a difference.
Yeah.
When people show up to testify, it's all the difference, because that's a lot of how especially bills that tend to be a bit sticky.
Yeah.
We need to hear from the public, and we need to hear from organizations like yours. So please come.
Thank you. Greatly appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, best of luck to both of you. Thanks to you. Well, so welcome to the HBA. I don't think we've had you here because your district originally was kind of the other direction. So it's nice to have you under the HBA roof. Are you familiar with us at all a little bit?
I think so, a little bit, yeah.
So I'm the CEO for the Home Builders Association, the plan administrator for our Home Builders Health Plan. It's a member benefit for a medical and health benefit for our employer members. And then we also run a foundation called Home Builders Care. And I'm the foundation administrator for that. So under this roof, the three organizations are run by a staff of 8, and then a multitude of volunteers that give us a lot of time and their time and energy and labor and financial support. So we couldn't do it. We wouldn't be here without all of our members. So since you're by yourself today, we'll modify it. We've been having candidate forums and had some rules in place, and we won't worry about that. But would you just give us like a 2-minute briefing of like what you hope to do with the Senate? We know you have a lot of experience for being a legislator, and what you hope to accomplish.
Sure. Well, in my background, I was a lifelong farmer, rancher, construction business owner, registered cattle breeder, national political consultant. I traveled all over the country doing that. But I think for this organization, the most important thing you need to know about me is that I served previously in the state senate from 2006 to 2012. Served out as vice chairman of the Judiciary Committee. And I also have that lifetime of experience in business. Now, all of that cumulatively does not mean that I know everything, but here's what I can do. I can hit the ground running on day one out in Bismarck. As you know, the legislature is a very challenging arena. And if you send someone out there who has no experience in the legislature and perhaps even worse yet, no experience in business, they are going to, it's going to take a long time before they can start to become effective. And I believe I can do that on day one. I was twice named the Legislator of the Year by the North Dakota Township Officers Association. I was the first legislator in the history of the award to be given that award as a freshman. And when I was first appointed to the Senate in 2006, I knew that if I was going to be effective in that very challenging arena, I would need to work hard to develop the respect and trust of good people from both political parties, from both chambers. And so I did that, and as a result of that, and I'm not saying that to boast about my record. What I'm doing is telling you this because it illustrates that if you work hard to develop the respect and trust of your colleagues, you're going to have success. So I prime sponsored 26 bills in 3 sessions, and 23 of them passed. And so I will do that again. There'll be new people out there. There are some people that I've served with that are out there. And so I'll work hard to develop those good relationships once again.
Wonderful. Well, it's great to have you here. What I would like to do is we're gonna just quickly go around the table and have everybody introduce themselves, name, company, and how they're involved with the different organizations.
I'm Elena Charlton, I'm with Good Company, a wholesale manufacturer, and I serve on the board of directors.
Okay, and who are you?
I'm Nancy Kelly. You might know me as Nancy Beaton. And I obviously am a labor masters, and I'm the vice president of the Home Builders Care Foundation.
Okay, and tell them our connection.
Well, he's from my home area, and his sister and my mom were lifelong best friends.
Oh, wow.
So my mom knows Curtis from when he's little.
Is it like a Park River area?
And Edinburgh, yeah.
Actually.
Yeah, okay, yep, I recognize.
And
Yep.
you left out that part that your mother and my sister were crazy horse ladies.
Oh, they were crazy horse
Oh.
ladies, they're still.
are.
Still, yes.
I'm Sylvia Lunsky, Design Direction is the business I have, and I am past president of the Home Builders Care.
And cool.
I'm Robin Swanson and I used to live in Hoople area.
Oh,
Yeah, don't hold that against him.
it's a plus actually.
Hoople's okay, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So you know where Mountain is?
Yeah, I do,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
And I serve on a committee here and I'm a past board member.
I'm Sam McDonald with Cascade Community Land Trust, and I'm on the Public Issues Committee at HBA.
John Goslin, I'm currently, I'm a senior life director, which means I've just been there a long time. And if I attend enough meetings, I get to vote. On the Public Issues Committee, Education Committee, as past president of the association. Been around the block.
I know the feeling.
I'm Elizabeth Kosel with the HBA. I'm the Public Affairs and Education Coordinator.
Good.
And you know me now, so. Well, what we've been doing is we've been asking, kind of various questions, so if any members want to ask anything, just jump in, but, I'm sure things have changed a little bit since the last time you served in the legislature, but, curious, what's your opinion on the, with term limits and, legalization of marijuana for employers, Any feelings on those two measures?
Oh, yes, I do.
We kind of digging into them now.
You brought up term limits first. I think it's a really bad idea. And I go back to what I said with my opening statement. It's a very challenging arena. It takes you a long time to learn the ropes. And I know several sitting state legislators and former state legislators in South Dakota. And they complain about, we have people that are serving as committee chairs when they're in their second session. And I don't care how smart you are not ready to be a committee chair in your second session. And the bottom line to the term limit measure is, I am asking my friends, why would you vote away your constitutional right to vote for the candidate of your choice? It makes no sense. And so I'm strongly opposed to it. I've already posted on social media my opposition to it. At the League of Women Voters Forum recently, there was a question that came up, which was kind of a silly question because the marijuana issue is already on the ballot. The people have put it on the ballot, but I was asked the question, will you advocate for legalization of marijuana in the upcoming session? And I said, no, I won't. But here's how I feel about the measure. The people have put it on the ballot. They invoked their rights to do that. If it passes, I will deal with it. If it doesn't pass, that'll be fine with me. So I hope both of these measures fail. Unfortunately, I have a concern that they are both going to pass.
Yeah, there's a lot of uninformed voters out there that it's,
And I know for your business, legalized marijuana is not really something that would be conducive to your workforce.
It makes everything, they started talking about this, I think, I attended a session that was put on, I forget who put it on. But you start talking, the trucking industry, the CDL, the people that need CDL, the people that, it makes it difficult. I'm not saying that it's probably, it's happening, and of course now with essentially being decriminalized, which probably maybe isn't the dumbest thing in the world, but as an employer, you're better off with somebody that drinks because they can drink, watching a football game on Sunday afternoon and Monday morning, unless they really overdid it, they're back to the problem and there's no good testing. The thing that gets opened up wide for, is if you get stopped and you're under the suspicion, there is no good test for marijuana. So from a driving standpoint, the biggest thing is from a company is that if your insurer tells you you will do this, it's gonna raise a lot of issues.
May I ask a question on that issue? What do you see that if that measure passes, and I'm concerned that it will, what do you see in the upcoming session that the legislature could do to help protect you as employers?
It's a real good one. So far, our insurance company, we happen to be with Dawson, which is Martha McLeod now. They haven't mandated it, so it'll be interesting. You hear stories about Colorado that nobody talks about.
Right.
At least from the highway patrol and law enforcement side of things. For some reason, somehow that's kept quiet, what their experience has been. I don't know what it, I think it'd be more, we're having a hard enough time recruiting people for all jobs, let alone law enforcement. I think it's just gonna make the law enforcement even greater for some of these young people that, oh God, now I gotta make a judgment call on somebody. And before with a breathalyzer and walk on a straight line or whatever, you at least had a little bit of, I don't know. I don't have an answer or what I'd like to see from you.
I do have a thought on that. I think if this passes, I think the legislature should immediately take action this session to put in place some important protections for employers. You should have the right to specify what your employees can and can't do. They can't come to work high on marijuana. They can't be, I think you still should be able to test your employees.
Yeah, and the challenge is if they did it on a Sunday, like you're referring to, it can still be in their system on a
Well,
Monday.
the year, they, whatever they,
Yeah.
it sticks with them for,
Nearly
3
days.
huh?
Nearly 60 days.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
But
so,
there are other jobs that require that now too, though. I have 2 kids and both of them work in industries that if they had any, if that was ever a trace in anything, they would be done. And so they just,
Yeah,
And,
don't.
and you,
that hemp heart, whatever
Yeah.
that I used to buy at Sam's, are like, do not have that when we're here. We cannot have that in any other food because
Oh,
it has a chemical in it that could create a positive test for them.
wow.
and you alluded to the headaches it puts out there for law enforcement. My daughter is an assistant state's attorney here in Cass County.
Mhm.
She is vehemently opposed to this because she said it's gonna create a mess for their office. They'll be,
yeah, you decriminalized it.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially with, and I kind of think maybe the people for going to jail that probably was due, but there's gonna be circumstances that if somebody gets into a car accident or gets into an accident, us as employers, first thing we're supposed to do if you have an employee in a serious accident is make sure they get a blood test done.
Yep.
So if it comes down to a liability issue, particularly if there's any
Yeah.
hint of fault,
there's no question this is going to increase your liability exposure. This passes.
it's probably in some regard, it'd be interesting to see what effect it may even have on insurance rates.
Right.
For when you talk about your, from any business, let alone construction business where they're running power tools.
Well, and as
Any
the,
business that has people on the road driving vehicles.
Yeah,
as the former owner of an earth moving construction business, I shudder to think of what could happen when you put one of your employees in a 93,000 pound semi, but carrying an oversized piece of equipment down the highway and their brain isn't into it.
yeah. I guess it would be different and they probably at some point probably will figure out a testing, but there is no, I don't know.
Well, okay, so that was a can of worms.
Yeah.
Is there anything from the last session that you've heard about that you would like to address in the upcoming session?
Yeah, I've been telling people that one of the reasons I'm running is because I'm very concerned about the dysfunction that I see in the legislature from the outside looking in. There's a lack of civility, there's a lack of collegiality, there's a lack of decorum. And that is not conducive to producing good legislation and having the system work well. It was not like that when I was there earlier, because we had people like Senator David Nething. Let's talk about term limits again. He was elected in 1966. If somebody started acting improperly or said something on the floor of the Senate that they really should not to be saying, he would stand up immediately and he would correct them. And he would cite from memory the rules of the Senate. And I have no illusions that I can become the next Senator David Nething, or that I can single-handedly alleviate all of these problems, but it is a big problem in the legislature. And we've also got an element in the legislature that I probably agree with them on 90% of the issues, but the problem with that particular group that shall remain nameless, but I think you'll know who I'm talking about. The problem is, if you don't agree with them 100% of the time on 100% of the issues, you're scum of the earth and they're coming after you.
Yeah,
And that's not a good atmosphere.
yeah.
So that's something that really concerns me and was a major motivation for me to run.
Wonderful. It's good. It'd be nice to see a change of seeing everybody working together again at some point. Do you see any issues that, we're thinking of the future that facing North Dakota 10 years from now that we're still gonna be facing? And if so, how can the HBA assist you in that?
Well, I'll share with you my number one campaign priority, and that's to get back on the Judiciary Committee, where I served previously for 6 years as vice chairman, and from that position, take action to do something about this ever-increasing rate of violent crime. I have to believe, all of you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I have to believe this must be a big concern for your association, because I have to believe that you would be concerned about people not wanting to move into a community or a neighborhood if it's having an increasing rate of violent crime. So that's my number one issue when I go out there. And I have a number of ideas on things that the legislature could and should do to have an impact on reducing that ever increasing rate. Even though I served previously for 6 years on Judiciary Committee where we deal with criminal justice issues, that does not make me an expert today, but I'll be working with people who are. As I mentioned, my daughter is an assistant state's attorney. So I'll be working closely with her and her colleagues. Brian Youngren is running for state's attorney. I really think highly of Brian. If I can put in a plug for him, I'll do that. That I'll also be working with Attorney General Drew Wrigley, who's coming out with a major crime initiative. And I'll also be working closely with Cass County Sheriff Jesse Johnner. He and I have talked several times about ideas that he has that he would like to see implemented in the legislature. And for those on my political side of the political aisle, there have been times, especially the House Appropriations Committee, not to single them out, but it's the House Appropriations Committee, who have been reluctant to spend money on some things that we need to do in order to reduce this ever increasing rate of crime. We need to be willing to spend money on rehabilitation and incarceration when rehabilitation isn't appropriate. And I understand and appreciate their tight-fistedness with the resources of our taxpayers, but there are things we need to spend money on as a matter of public safety. And so I think that's a big issue facing our state going forward. It's a big issue facing our whole country. And I will be, I'm soon submitting a letter to the editor to the Fargo Forum. I'm going to be introducing a piece of legislation called rebuttable presumption. And the simple explanation for what that is and what it will do, it gives prosecuting attorneys like my daughter and Ryan Youngren the ability to petition the court to deny bail to a defendant who comes into the court and has a significant history of violent crime. And the prosecutor can ask that the judge deny bail pending the outcome of the trial. The rebuttable part comes in where the defense attorney can petition the court to say, my defendant, my client is not a threat to society, at which point the judge can hold up the rap sheet and say, I think he is, or she.
Yeah.
And I talked to a judicial candidate for the judgeship, and he said he really likes this idea because he said what it will do, it will empower judges to be able to say, we can do this because the legislature has made a statement that they want to see this done, that they want people kept in jail who are a proven threat to society. And of course, prosecutors and police and judges, they have to follow what the legislature has given them in the Century Code. And so if we pass that piece of legislation that will, this was the judge candidate now, and said that will empower judges to refer to that piece of legislation and say, this is why this defendant is going to stay in jail.
That's really interesting. Crime was, go ahead.
Well, we had the county commissioners, people running for county commission here a week or so ago, and I'm paraphrasing, but they basically said, unless it's a serious crime and a felony, you will not go to jail because they are full and they have no room for here in Cass County. That's exactly what they said.
Yep.
And so, and I'm looking at all the things that happen, whether it's someone in my lobby that won't leave, or someone who gets in a fight out front, or, you know, these white collar crimes and stuff like that. So nobody gets any, there's no consequence to what they do because we're out of space.
Well,
And they know that, I'm sure.
and so that position, that attitude where, well, we can't put everybody in jail, we have to just live with it. No, we don't. We have to find a solution to it. The solution to it is we have to make more of an investment in providing the facilities that can keep society safe.
Aren't they adding on to Cass County Jail?
They're doing something back there.
Well, that's the part of the jail.
No, that's on the other side of the pond. But yeah.
I think, didn't they pass or?
They did, yes, but it's still in the building phase, and if they're full now, they have 60 spots open in the women's pod, but they can't put men in the women's pod.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how many women are in, but my thought, take the women out, put them somewhere else, but a lot of guys in.
I just heard one of the guys running over in Moorhead or Clay County. I think it was Paul. Kavanaugh, and they've got room, I think, over in, they talk about that, theirs is open. And they all share a space, I mean, when they need it.
And there's no easy solutions to all of these, but it all costs money.
Right, right. Well, and it brings up the other side of that issue too, behavioral health and the investment needed to address. So maybe things can be curbed to not get to the point where their problems are addressed before.
And that's key. You just hit on a key point, because we have to address the root causes of that increasing crime rate.
Yeah,
And there are root causes to it. It's
yeah,
mental health, it's addiction, it's drug use. It's there's a lot of root causes there.
well, and for our industry, it's hard to house. It's hard to draw people into neighborhoods if it's rental property for colleges or, new construction. If you know that the crime, and it is everywhere in this region, we have an issue, no doubt. So some of the quietest, nicest neighborhoods that have been existing there's constant break-ins, and it's getting scary. Another quick question for you. What do you think the largest challenge and the largest opportunity for the legislature as an entity is right now?
I think the largest challenge is continued good stewardship of the resources that we have. We've got a lot of money in the legacy fund. I think we need to start using some of that in a judicious manner, because if we don't do something with it, the people will step in and we'll have an initiated measure on that too. And they'll want to spend it in a way that is not judicious. That's my concern.
Okay.
And so I think, and we've got the school lands trust fund. There's something over 8 billion in the legacy fund. There's around 6 in the school lands trust fund. I'd like to see that used. Some more resources used out of that for helping schools who have facility needs. There are a lot of them. My granddaughters are in the school up in Cavalier, where Nancy's familiar with, and a bond referendum has failed up there at least twice, if not 3 times, by just a very narrow margin. And I think if the voters of that school district knew that the state of North Dakota was going to provide assistance to them to complete the building project, whatever form that's in, probably in the form of a very low interest loan, I think some of those school improvements that are needed maybe would pass. So that's something that I think we have to start using. And I'm the first to be cautious about overspending, but we have to be using some of those resources in a public way that the general public can see.
Yes.
And that can resonate with them. Hey, they're not just squirreling this money away to never use it again.
Well, particularly, I mean, the easy one that everybody does see is education.
Right.
Along that line, one of the issues that keeps coming up, I think that we get asked about, although we're in the metropolitan area, is rural North Dakota and you were just out at a housing conference. It's hard to go build in rural North Dakota. Because you can't get appraisals to work.
Builders don't want to go.
Well, builders don't wanna go,
Understand.
builders would go if they could get, but it takes too long to get the thing going, plus. Yeah, so it's interesting how, so those people at some point just say, okay, I'm gonna move into the city then. And so unless you have the money put away, I mean, occasionally we'll get a build out of it, but those people have the money to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're there. So, I mean, rural North Dakota does need some help if we see that as a need.
Well, one of the proposals that is on the table, which I'm really supportive of, two of my former colleagues, they've been there a while. Senator Don Shibley and Representative Mike Nathy have proposed another major increase in the share that the state takes over for the cost of K through 12 education. The $340 million plan, likely using proceeds out of the legacy fund. And that will then move the state's share of the cost of K through 12 education from 70% to 85%. And I have always been an advocate that the cost for K through 12 education should not fall solely on the shoulders of property owners. That should be everybody's responsibility. So this is the way to do that. And so if I'm elected, I will strongly support that. I'd like to see the state take over 100% of the cost of K through 12 education. That's what our state constitution kind of says.
There's other like concerns with daycare, as we know,
Oh, yeah.
right? And so like if we could get, if both people were working, maybe we
Yep.
can get out of a rented apartment, get into a home. And someone had just mentioned to me recently, why does our support only start at kindergarten?
Mhm.
Like, is there a way, right? of-
Elementary school.
Yeah, daycare, because you can't go to work and now you're home and then who knows, I just have to,
Or the daycares cost so much that a person can't work.
right,
They
can't afford to
better
work.
Stay home.
And then the kids, it's not always the
Yeah.
best environment, right? If you
Yeah.
really maxed out on for
Yeah.
the children, are they safe?
Right.
Yeah.
Because the parents are so stressed out by having to be home with them.
Daycare with, that property.
Yes,
Right, right.
yes.
And the daycares can't stay in business either, which is, it's the world. One last question for you. We had a question pertaining to economic incentives. And different communities do different things, but the state legislature dictates what can be offered and what the community's jurisdictions can adopt. Any thoughts or concerns on economic incentives? And in our industry, for example, in the metro areas, you have downtown has a completely new face. And what it's done to the tax base because of it in the positive ways and the activities that are now occurring. On the flip side, as Fargo and West Fargo and Horace, North Dakota are growing and they're growing in all these bedroom communities, there are property tax incentives for new construction.
Right.
Which we see as, we heard today, interest rates are going up again for a mortgage. That's devastating. For anybody young, a young unestablished family, they're living in a rental unit or maybe existing home or renting an existing home to get into new construction. So we have the 2-year property tax exemption that basically gives us savings for 2 years on a mortgage of about $150 to $200 a month for that new family to get established in their home. Any thoughts on any of those incentives or concerns?
Well, I'm not, I've never been opposed to economic incentives, but I think they have to be targeted to where they will do the most good. And one of the areas, and this probably doesn't apply specifically to your industry, but one of the areas of government economic incentives that's always concerned me is when political subdivisions, whether that be a county or a city, and there's a major manufacturing plant that's being proposed, and the company is shopping around for cities or counties to see where they can get the most incentives, and they end up getting into a bidding war. That kind of scenario I don't like, but what you just described, where you have some incentives to help a family get into a startup home, I like ideas like that. But I've always been troubled by political subdivisions getting into this competition. And you see it all the time.
Yeah, don't they have to look for a workforce though? I mean, it's 22, you know, who's got people?
That was a nice segue into the new economy.
Yeah.
And
then there's no daycare, so they can't work.
Yeah.
And back to that issue, that is a major issue that we need to address, and there's a lot of support for addressing it in the upcoming session on both sides of the political aisle. And when I became aware of how big a problem it was, I started thinking about, well, how could the state play a role in helping people find more accessibility to healthcare and more affordable healthcare. And the governor is coming up with some type of proposal, and the details are not on the table yet, but I think from what has been said, I think what he will be proposing is something similar to what I thought. And I was thinking that we need to find some type of public-private partnership where because it's a deterrent to our economy, big time.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
when people when one of the parents has to stay home because they can't afford daycare or can't find it,
Right.
then it's an economic deterrent to our workforce. And so I envision something like, if an employer who has X number of employees, I don't know what that number is. We have to draw a line in the sand all the time when we're working on legislation, but an employer has X number of employees. If they provide assistance for childcare, maybe in-house, maybe off-site, but they're providing financial incentives to their employees so that they can access childcare, then I would envision the state of North Dakota could step in, again, you're probably using proceeds from the legacy fund or somewhere else. Our oil revenues have been stellar for the last several months here. But the state of North Dakota could perhaps step in and give some financial incentives, which could be in the form of taking over unemployment insurance taxes or workers' comp premiums or property tax subsidies, something to give them an economic incentive, for employers to have an economic incentive. And both the state and the employers would need to have some skin in the game. Again, the state just can't give a free ride to employers either. So that's what I envision, and this is gonna be a big issue in the upcoming session.
There's also, it's like, you know, like what we pay our electricians or, right? We think nothing of, you can't even get one. If I had a small task, so what, $75 an hour, whatever I'd pay. And we're paying the people who are taking care of our children $12 an hour.
Yeah.
$13, you know, we're not getting the cream of the crop at the daycares either. And they're hungover and they're whatever they're doing. It's like, there's gotta be something like what. Yeah, and they're not showing up. So what if that became a desirable, you know, so I know the employers have a piece in this, but how do we, like the daycare?
Pay them more.
Yeah, I know, but how, right? That's where it's coming from.
Yeah.
That's gotta come from some grant.
But how does the daycare providers?
Yes.
That's what I'm saying, like, here's.
Because then they charge the family $6,000 a month or whatever.
Right.
It's
gotta
not
have a
affordable.
supplement.
I mean, it's not
And that's,
possible.
no, for the employer, that's what it's, I hear you, but it's like, it's gotta come right down to the.
Yeah. One other topic to just mention before we wrap up is the workforce. Our industry, John kind of alluded to it a little bit, but the skilled workforce issue is a labor in general, not just laborers. But that is something that is driving housing costs up dramatically as well, because we are paying higher wages.
Right.
But with all the other factors that are driving up the cost for home building, remodeling, commercial builds, whatever it may be, is the fact that we just don't have the youth going into the industry.
Well, I think historically, even going back to when I served in the Senate, the higher education system is putting too much emphasis on four-year degrees that are a road to nowhere and not enough
Yeah.
emphasis on skilled trades.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to see, the colleges that provide that type of training get some kind of assistance from the state, at least try to show people what they can do with their life if they enter the skilled trades.
Yeah, well, and we're working really hard on it from our end. I mean,
Yeah.
we're a huge supporter of the Career Innovation Center, the Moorhead Academy. We were funders for that project on the Cass County side. But we run an expo of the Fargo Dome, that introduces all areas of trades. So health, tech, and then, the construction trades, but, yeah, from a legislative perspective, any funding that can help those programs or help employers. Our issue is that we can't get them on the job site under the age of 18. It's a federal law.
Right.
And, the waiver for the Department of Labor for that, the paperwork is cumbersome. And then the workman's comp, insurance is not affordable. So those are the factors that play into it for us, but yet other industries are allowed to have kids near a fryer at age 15, 16.
Right.
So it's,
Or on a farm tractor.
yeah, and we're just asking for more input, agriculture too. Yep, but under a controlled environment, what can we do to get kids, even an eighth grader, so that they can be introduced to these wonderful careers where you can actually start a business, have a great career, and if you wanna go back and get a 4-year business degree or your MBA, you have no debt because you're making money while you're going to school again. So it's, but yeah, those are the challenges we're facing, is getting, we need to be talking to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade ages, because the 8th grade is they're the ones that are picking their classes that takes them into that job ready mode that the academy is gonna achieve for us eventually too. And so, yeah, so those are something from a legislative perspective. There's ways that we can address it for the industry to be helpful.
Well, I'm a big supporter of trying to steer people toward the skilled trades.
So we appreciate that very much. Is there anything that you would like to tell us before we wrap up?
Yeah, I thank you for that opportunity. I'd like to share with all of you why I decided to move to Fargo. And I'm an NDSU alum, first of all, so I have a lot of affinity for the Cass County and the city of Fargo. And my daughter is here, my 2 grandsons are here. My late wife and I talked about getting a place in Fargo as I was exiting out of our farming and ranching operation. We talked about getting a place in Fargo and spending summers back on the farm, spending winters down here in Fargo where there's a lot more to do. And then COVID came along and she got sicker and sicker with cancer. So we never got to make that move. She passed away in June of last year.
I'm so sorry.
So I still think this is a good place for me to be. Puts me in the middle of the family I want to stay close to. My daughter is here. My son is in Cavalier. He's chief financial officer and executive vice president of the United Valley Bank System. And my daughter's, like I said, an assistant state's attorney here. My stepdaughter lives in Sioux Falls and has a beautiful family. I want to stay close to her. So I've got my airplane here in Fargo, so I can get to any one of those places. So this is a good place for me to be, and I would have made this move even without any opportunity to run for the Senate, so.
Really, that's wonderful. Well, we're glad you're here.
Yeah.
Very glad you're here.
I just wanted to let you know.
That's wonderful. Look, and what I would like you to know too is that we can be a resource. We have a lot of data on the metro and the region in terms of housing needs, how economic incentives play into keeping the building industry healthy, because we're an economic engine.
Right.
That workforce piece is huge for us though. that can be very damaging to the economy we're one of the strongest economic engines out there for the state of North Dakota, so.
No question.
But please call on us if you need data or if you wanna know about challenges or successes, whatever we can do to help you.
I will
Take your job.
definitely do that. Shyness is not one of my virtues.
All right. Well, Nancy. That's awesome. Well, it was great to see you today. We appreciate your time.